In other words,
The mellow sounds of Allan Harris.
And celebrating the King legacy.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Black Nouveau. I'm Milton, Dockery.
And I'm Faithe. We're glad you could join us. On this edition, we'll hear the sounds of jazz musician Allan Harris.
Dr. Ramel Smith, our resident psychologist, will offer his take on recent reports of youth vandalism and violence.
But we begin with a different vision of our youth. The student winners of the Martin Luther King Speechwriting Contest will present their winning essays this Sunday at the Marcus Center's 28th Annual Martin Luther King Celebration. Donavan Nathaniel is the winner in the 9th and 10th grade category, writing on Maintain Faith in the Future.
Faith. What is faith? Future. What is future? Well, if you look the words up in a dictionary, you will find faith being defined as belief, trust, confidence, conviction in regard to religion, systems of religious beliefs, strict adherence to duty and promise, or a word or honor of pledge. Future is defined as that is to be, pertaining to time to come, or all that is to happen. When I was a little younger, I wanted to be tall. So I would measure myself up against my mother because I believed that one day I would pass her. Then I could set the mark for my father. Today, I can say I'm way taller than my mother and I stand an inch over my dad. So believe that is to be. So how do we maintain faith in the future when we are constantly presented with negativity? There's not a day that goes by that we are not confronted with the news that the U.S. is over $15 trillion in debt and that America faces a job crisis. We're constantly reminded that families are losing their homes, children are going hungry, and that there still is an educational gap between all races. Yet, we live in the land of opportunity and prosperity. There's not a day that goes by that we aren't reminded that our government officials can't set aside partisanship for bipartisanship for the good of the people. There's not a day that goes by. So how do we maintain faith in the future? Here's the answer. We maintain faith in the future by starting with ourselves. Our faith in the future must take hold as an infectious disease that attacks the human body. We must hold on to our beliefs, trusting in our convictions, and with the confidence that there's a brighter day ahead. We must refuse to be a statistic of negativity, but instead a statistic of positivity. We must take a stand in our communities and in our country and let our voices be heard that we will not settle for injustice and inequality. We must work on holding and believing that there's a better day ahead for everyone. It's knowing that change doesn't come just because, but because someone has the conviction, the confidence, the trust, and the belief that change is right. I was reminded of this when I looked through the glass of room 306, the last room Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stayed in, and the balcony he died on. That faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. President Obama stated in his speech to the Joint Session of Congress on September 9th, 2009, "We did not come to fear the future. We came here to shape it." And I say to you, I do not fear the future. I am ready to help shape it. And the question is, are you?
Donavan, that was simply superb.
Thank you. Thank you.
How long did it take you to write your speech?
I actually started in August. The competition, the preliminaries at Central Office starts about the first week in December, end of November. And I make sure that I give myself enough time that I can write down thoughts and everything of what Dr. King means to me and the topic of what the topic means to me also.
You mentioned in your speech, and as it relates to Dr. King, visiting the Lorraine National Civil Rights Museum. What was that experience like for you?
The experience gave me goosebumps. My parents took me down there Labor Day weekend, and we went down there, and it was just a tremendous experience. I went down there, and I actually got to sit on the bus Rosa Parks sat on, and got to see a lot of different artifacts and learn a lot more stuff that is not taught in school, or things that you already hear but you haven't seen it. And it was just that extra little thing that that pushes me to do better in life and reminds me of what Dr. King did.
So it made a huge impact on you.
It had a very huge impact.
And it's something that you would recommend other young people to do, to visit the museum.
Yes, if you can, yes.
This is your 4th time entering the Martin Luther King contest.
Yes.
What was the first time?
First time I entered, I was in 5th grade. A teacher actually recommended the competition to me. She entered me in the competition after I had delivered a speech at our honor roll night, and I went there, and I was naive about it at first. I went to the competition, and I really wasn't expecting much, and did it, and got to the final Saturday. And to be honest, I didn't even know I won it at first. I was just up there, and I wasn't paying attention. I was just back there looking at my mom, and but it was a great experience for the first time that I had did the competition. Yes.
What did you write about?
Write about the first competition that I entered. It was not maintaining faith in the future, but it was about time for positive action. So it was basically about how now is the time to have positive action, have positive thinking, and how it's time for us now as humans, as a human race, to start doing better and doing our part in the world.
How long have you been writing?
Writing, I'll probably say I really started liking writing about 4th grade, 5th grade.
Okay. Yeah. And is this something that you like to continue after college?
I have thoughts and means of doing it after college. Being a motivational speaker is something that I would like to do. Continue on, yeah.
Well, listen, congratulations on behalf of the entire family of Black Nouveau.
Thank you.
I think our community has a great deal to be proud of in a young person like you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The 28th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday Celebration will be held on Sunday, January 15th at 1 p.m. at the Marcus Center for the Performing Arts. This event is open and free to the public.
I still have a dream, deeply rooted in the American dream.
With those words, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. emerged from the 1963 March on Washington as one of America's preeminent civil rights leaders. His speech not only stirred the thousands of march attendees, it echoed across the nation and the world.
Self-evident that all men are created equal.
During the 60s and late 50s, this country was again to be split in two. Black versus white, haves versus the have-nots. And it was Dr. King who said we could live together as brothers. But it transcends America, and that Dr. King's message really is international. No matter where you go in the world today, if there is unrest and unjust, people lock arms and start singing, "We shall overcome."
One of the march attendees was a 16-year-old Milwaukeean, Geraldine McGowan.
I was in the National Council of Negro Women, the Youth Council, and we were asked to sell lapel badges in the street to raise funds for the March on Washington. I was 16, and I think about 40 or 50 went to Washington, D.C., and we stayed in Mount Carmel Baptist Church, 6 blocks from the White House.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
I remember that speech that Dr. King spoke about his dream, and I was just burning inside, didn't know how to express myself. We were so happy, we were jumping for glee, because we never heard anything like that before. That's the first time I ever heard anything of that magnitude before. And to me, he was a hero.
And so 48 years later, she went back to D.C. with a busload of Wisconsinites to celebrate the dedication of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial on the National Mall. The trip was sponsored by the Ambassadors for Peace program and the Maricopa Coalition for Social Justice. Saturday's arrival in D.C. gave the Milwaukee contingent time to participate in the reenactment march and protest for jobs and economic equality. The group also met with Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Milwaukee's 4th Congressional District.
That Milwaukee and your constituents support you 100%.
That's right.
Take a message back to our president.
All right.
That we're not going to give in or give up.
That's right.
Absolutely. We're going to pass that jobs bill. Are we going to pass the jobs bill?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, she was here. She's 16 years old. Come over here and take a picture.
All right. Come on, girlfriend.
Go ahead on. Go ahead on.
For without you and what we have collectively done together, we would not be able to participate in this truly one of the greatest moments in our history.
On Sunday, Milwaukeeans joined thousands of other citizens for the official dedication. Hosted by PBS's Gwen Eiffel and with live coverage from C-SPAN and many other cable networks, attendees listened for hours to an array of speakers and performers.
We marched through the streets yesterday at Washington. We gave one message: you will not undo the King dream. You will not take away the Voting Rights Act.
And as the choir sang, 2 American families made their way to the stage through the memorial.
In this place, he will stand for all time. Among monuments to those who fathered this nation and those who defended it, a black preacher, no official rank or title, who somehow gave voice to our deepest dreams and our most lasting ideals. And finally, there are the multitudes of men and women whose names never appear in the history books. Those who marched and those who sang, those who sat in and those who stood firm, those who organized and those who mobilized, all those men and women who through countless acts of quiet heroism helped bring about changes few thought were even possible. By the thousands, said Dr. King, faceless, anonymous, relentless young people, black and white, have taken our whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the Founding Fathers in the formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. To those men and women, to those foot soldiers for justice, know that this monument is yours as well.
I feel uplifted and inspired to have, and very honored to have been around the same time as this great international hero. I feel very good. People are getting together, we have the same problems, and we're expressing our problems, trying to do something about it. I'm very inspired again, and go back and teach my grandkids more because I've learned more.
With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Last year, we heard about youth violence at the Mayfair Mall, then at the State Fair, and more recently, group theft at some convenience stores. Are these isolated incidents, or is there something more going on? Joining us to discuss these issues is Dr. Ramel Smith. Dr. Smith, welcome back to Black Nouveau,
Hey,
sir.
thanks a lot for having me.
Dr. Smith, are these Milwaukee incidents isolated, or is there more going on, sir?
Well, I mean, obviously we're going to hear about Milwaukee because this is where we're at, but this is just a microcosm of what's going on in our country. We're seeing it all across from the east to west, the south, Midwest, is all over.
But Doc, what's going on to cause this shift with our young people? And let's stress here, we're talking about some young people.
Yeah, and that's a great point because it's not all young people, and I think sometimes we see some of the negative in those things get amplified. But what happened is, in a point you had talked about earlier, we talk about social media, we talk about technology. People see different things, and you talk about the whole copycat syndrome. People see things going on one place, and then they replicate it and do it in another. So that has a big part to do with it.
But Doc, you know, one of the things my parents said to me, young man, don't you bring no shame on this family.
Yeah.
How have we gotten away from that with some people?
Well, I think the big thing, what you said, is my parents. And sadly, we don't have a lot of two parents home. And even in some of the single parent homes, you have some good children come out. But in some of the homes, we don't have parents who were taught, so they don't know how to be parents themselves. Sometimes we saw, unfortunately, where parents came to help their children fight. So what we have to look and see what information is being imparted onto our children in the first place.
Doc, what role does getting props from your peers play in this?
Well, we all know that at this time of adolescence and teenage years that the social group that's the most important to you are your peers. So it doesn't matter what your mom says, what anybody else who you have great respect and reverence for, but it's about those people you see every day, what they say. And unfortunately, a lot of the negative things is what garner respect for our young children.
But how does the way one is raised play in this? Even though your peers may pressure you, but if you are raised a certain way, you know that's not right.
Well, you know what, and that's a good point, because even if you're raised correctly, you still can be prone to do bad things by those peer groups. Now, those who don't have the strongest raising in the beginning are more likely to do it, but even those from strong homes can fall into that. I look at certain incidents where you see people where a parent turned in her children. She said, oh, wow, look at these children. She said, oh, those are mine. And she said, I didn't teach them to do that. And she actually turned her children in. And I think sometimes what you see is children get caught up in something, and it's a whole social group. And when you get into that whole group mob mentality, it takes away the individual, right? And you take on the role of the group. And when the group is so big, it's not the isolated look on you, so it gives you permission to do things that you might not normally do.
But Doc, here's something that's disturbing to me about many of these incidents. There's a certain amount of viciousness that is being displayed.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, I think, one, when we see it, it's something that we have to stop. And we always want to blame the people who are doing it. But I think it goes back to your question as far as what do the parents have to do with it? When we see children let out this type of venom, what we have to recognize is that really they're displacing this feelings, and what it is something else going on with inside of them. There's an inner rage that's going on. So when you get a chance to unleash it, it unleashes in a magnitude in which we're seeing today. So when we see that type of rage leashed out on other people, what we're really seeing is a lot of inner hurt.
So we need to find ways to channel that then, right?
That's exactly it. When we look at youth are always going to have this sense of invincibility. It's me against the world. It won't happen to me, that I can beat the odds. And what we have to do is when we see this energy, we say, okay, this is negative energy, but we can smile because we say, how can we flip the script? Now, how can we turn this negative into positive? We look at some of the teenagers of the 60s and we see what they did with the civil rights movement. They used that energy when they were upset to fight, but to fight in a powerful way, not to fight towards against each other.
Doc, there seems to be a no snitch policy. Talk about that.
Well, yeah, that's the old saying, snitches get stitches. And so the kids have sometimes been taught wrong what a true snitch is. And I think what we have to do is redefine what the word snitch is. Back in the day when they talked about snitches, that's when two people did dirt and one got caught, but he wouldn't tell on the other one. But now if you see someone doing wrong, that's not snitching. That's actually being a good citizen. That's being a role model. That's being a hero in a sense, because you are informing somebody of a wrong that's being done. So what we have to do is redefine really what snitch is to our young people.
Got about a minute and a half, 2 more questions. You mentioned earlier about some parents turning their children in. How do parents get a handle on what is happening with their children outside the home?
Well, you know what? One of the big things is what you said is the parents have to start at home. And if you start at home, that does not eliminate the possibility of it happening, but it reduces the chances. And when we see this, we have to use these as teaching moments for the parents. So when they see something on television, son, daughter, what would you do if you saw that? How would you avoid that? How would you escape that situation? Do role life scenarios. What we try to do is the what if game. So when it happens, it's not new, but they'll have something back in their mind to pull out and say, I know what I can do and can pull that out as a reference.
You know, and that's simply fantastic because we have a lot of nephews that are driving now and we teach them how to deal with police when they're pulled over.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's very important. Doc, very briefly, are there warning signs parents should be looking for?
Well, yeah, you know what? What you want to do is see what I always talk about is change and differences. If you see a change in the personality, a difference in what your child is doing and what they normally do, that's a red flag for anything. If your child is doing something different or they change significantly, that's always the red flag to start asking questions.
Dr. Ramel Smith, thank you for joining us on Black Nouveau.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Always.
Allan Harris is an internationally known jazz singer, guitarist, and songwriter. Liddy Collins caught up with him recently when he performed at the Wisconsin Lutheran College.
Feel like shouting her name, let it ring through the air. There's a chance, catch a glance, it would knock me down. When she walks my way, I just feel like a clown, yes I do. Just like that tide washes the sand, she sweeps my mind. Not hearing or feeling, I'm just left hypnotized. I'm just lonely, just left hungry for your eyes. I'm just crazy, just left hazy, I'm in love.
This is the Allan Harris Band performing at Wisconsin Lutheran College. Jazz singer and guitarist Allan Harris has played the guitar since the age of 9, and his voice is often compared to Nat King Cole.
I can't think of a better male vocalist to be compared to. His diction, the way he carried himself, no scandals, the way he sang those beautiful songs. You know, Billy Eckstine said, most people sing standards, Nat Cole makes standards when he sings them. Let me play among the stars. Let me see what little bitty spring's gonna be like, yeah, on Jupiter or Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, why don't you just kiss me? Fill my heart with song. Let me sing forever, evermore. You are all I'm gonna long for, yes. All I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna love you.
Music has always been in Harris's life. His mother was a classical pianist and was in the first graduating class of the Performing Arts School in New York City.
So there was music all in my house, you know, everything. You heard jazz, you heard country, R&B, and a lot of artists came through there when I was a kid. Plus my aunt, one of my aunts had a soul food restaurant down from the Apollo called Kate's Place. And it's on a few albums, Jimmy Smith, Home Cooking in front of it. And every Sunday they have a matinee for kids, you know, and you wore your little outfits. Remember, those were the days when you said yes, ma'am, no, please, whatever you had to mind yourself. So I used to go to the matinees with them, and after that we'd go eat at my Aunt Kate's restaurant. And you see everyone in there, from Sarah Vaughan, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, you know, he knew my family. Matter of fact, he babysitted me once. I was scared of him, like a big frog. That's gonna be on TV, isn't it? He did, he had a boy, hey kid. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm happy as a king. I've been blessed enough to have the older cats who've taken me underneath their wing. Some of them have been really harsh, you know. When you're young and you're trying to show your worth, you get on stage with them. I had one guy named Roger Humphrey from Pittsburgh. He's a famous drummer. Played with George Benson, a number of people. I remember when I was 17 years old, I jumped on stage with him, and he just turned to the audience and me and said, "Son, you need to go home and learn some songs now."
He said those were good lessons, which taught him how to carry himself as an artist who's ventured into another genre.
Nobody knows his name. Sometimes around a full moon, better make it to that river and hide along the bank.
Tell me about your musical Cross That River.
It's wild. It's a story of a runaway slave, 1855, right before the Civil War, and he runs away from Louisiana to Texas, becomes a black cowboy. And I take him from 1855 through the Civil War through the cattle drives, which lasted only about 20 years. And I'm having fun with it, you know. It's 40% of all the cowboys during that period were people of color. Not many people know that. You make me feel so good.
You can check out Allan Harris's latest video along with others on YouTube.
Out there in that new promised land, maybe then we can find some love and a little peace of mind. I'm so crazy about you. Never know what love band, you can come out, you can blow now if you want to. We're through.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau.
Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.
Good night. Thanks for watching.